nose on this is freaking amazing.
Very nice.
Absolutely amazing. It's
I
great
would
stuff.
drink that. I know it's not an Isla, but I would drink that.
I know you would.
I would
Okay.
drink
that's
that.
her back.
All right. Eric Leader, if you can do me a favor and mute everybody, please, except for our guests, yourself and Michael Nolan and me. Okay. All right, Eric, are we ready to go?
We are ready to go.
Okay, so Joshua, Jason, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. Few things that we're going to be doing here. As I mentioned already, we're going to have a little bit of an interview, some back and forth. Michael Nolan's going to be talking with us as well. And then we're going to open it up for questions to everybody else who's here. Now, one thing that you'd like to know, though, that's interesting is I'm going to start a little bit differently. I have in front of me here an email from October 6th, 2015. Okay?
This
Okay,
never
now.
ends well.
All right.
I've been in court before.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So this is an email from me to Brett Pontani in response to an email that I got from you. And my email to Brett was, who are these guys and are they legit? Because
you found out more.
Right. And so Brett's response is they've been doing their own bottlings for a while. They're old customers of mine. Everything they're doing is completely legit. Great lineup like Whiskey Fest, but they like to keep the vibe calm. I love the fact that they started this. And what he said here, Josh is the Midwest rep for Impex Beverages, Kilcoman, Aaron, Chieftain's Choice, Exclusive Malts. And I said, got it. I'll do what I can to help him out. Okay.
Awesome.
And then he responded, no worries. You will like him. Once folks understand that this is essentially like Whiskey Fest, but more chill, they'll really like the idea.
Awesome. Oh,
And about a few weeks after that, Joshua, you and I had lunch with Evan Kleberg, who's on here, and the rest is history. So usually the first question I ask is, what are you two drinking tonight and why? Okay, so I'm going to start with Jason. Jason, what are you drinking tonight and why?
So I've got the Single Cask Nation Milk and Honey ex-rum cask. It arrived this afternoon.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I have not tasted this since Joshua and I selected it. When did we select it? Last summer?
That's correct. I brought the sample back from the distillery in June.
Very
Okay.
nice. Now, were they aging it in the rum cask, or did you guys age it in the rum cask after you got it from them?
Nope, that was them.
Yep.
It was them? Okay. Joshua,
that was
what are you
them.
drinking tonight?
I am drinking it's never made it to the U.S., but a single malt of Scotland Glentalkers,
Uh-huh.
because I looked at my wall and I thought I was grabbing the Single Cask Nation Imperial, but as I went like this, my head went like this, and I grabbed something else. And then I looked at my hand and saw it wasn't what I was aiming for, but I said, you know what, I like Glentalkers anyway.
Okay.
So,
So you're happy. Now, what were you intending to actually pick of your bottles there?
So it was actually would have been this one.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very nice. Okay. So, as you know, we started these talks because of the fact that we are all in mourning for the loss of Whiskey Week here in Chicago. Whiskey Week, as you know, it's the big event with World of Whiskeys. You're always there. A bunch of us are always there. It's wonderful. And so we decided to start these interviews and have a good time and really interact with people in a way that's different from just podcasts. But since we're in mourning for Whiskey Week, and that's a big event, the first question I'm going to ask you is Whiskey Jubilee. Is it ever going to be coming back? Because I got to tell you, man, we loved that.
It's your turn to answer that question, Joshua.
Oh gosh. Can I put more leaves on the branches than you usually do?
You can back it up. You can put a pin in it. You can do whatever makes you happiest, Joshua.
Nice picture, Nolan.
That's the last official
Cheers, Nolan.
taken at Jubilee for me.
Gosh. Look at this, and my hair hasn't changed at all. Like, holy moly.
Look at
Like-
how great my hair looked there.
Yeah. look
So
at
what's the
that.
answer, Joshua?
So the answer is
Thanks, Nolan. Real good one.
the Jubilee.
That's at the end of the evening, you know.
Yeah, clearly. Can't feel my face anymore.
The Jubilee will not be returning. However, we were planning a special 10-year anniversary event that we had hoped would happen in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we'll see how pandemics and things of that nature kind of postpone things. But we're planning an epic one-off 10-year anniversary event that will be unlike anything that we've done in the past and unlike anything that we're aware of that's been done in the U.S. at all.
Where do you think it's going to be?
There? That's one of the things that we don't know. There is a chance, Gil, a slight chance that you may need to book a flight. But we
I'm
will
okay
make
with that. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It's all good.
Los Angeles.
No, I just go to Los Angeles.
Very, very nice. All right,
The nice
so
thing about
Joshua.
Chicago is, the nice thing
Yeah.
about Chicago is it's
I
the middle of the country.
Right. Easy to get here. Easy for everybody.
Julie noted, written in my notebook.
Yeah.
There you go. But I will say this, though. I'll add this to what Joshua said. That was far fewer words than I thought Joshua was going to use there. I will say that when we mothballed it, we knew that it was popular. We knew it was in demand. And to be able to pull it while people said, I wish it still existed,
Yeah.
was a much better feeling than people quietly whispering among themselves, it's been dying for a few years. And I wouldn't take it upon myself to point to any other whiskey shows in the United States.
Mhm.
But when we all talk privately, there's clearly shows that are way past their sell-by date, and they still happen. And Joshua and I never wanted to put the Jubilee into that boat. So
Well, you're ahead for sure. I mean, you know, you leave them wanting for more, which is what you did. We all want more. So I mean,
exactly.
the timing was good. And it did
Cheers,
help you
Gil.
build your brand. It was a wonderful event, and it helped you build your brand, which was
sure.
great.
And again, thanks to all your help. Thanks to Michael Nolan. Thanks to Michael Bloom. You know, there are other people I'm looking through the screen here. Debbie Samuels, of course. Like you people really supported it and really helped us. And Joshua and I really appreciate that. So thank you all.
Our pleasure. It's a win-win. We all love the events. They were great. So
And if I
let's
missed
talk
you
some
and you're in
whiskey.
here, I apologize.
So let's talk some whiskey. So you guys taste, I can't even count how many casks you go through a year. How do you know when you've tasted something that it's special?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really easy answer. We return to it, so what did we just sell? We sold our Aaron a week ago. This is the 200 ml sample that we got from Aaron. You can see Aaron 2010 Cask 88.
Okay.
Right, and so you can imagine how much we use to select a cask, right?
Right.
Then, as I suggested with the milk and honey, as the months are ticking along and the release is still sitting in Scotland, bottled and labeled, and then it hits a boat, then it hits custom, then we start, right? It's a long time.
Right.
I kept returning to this Aaron 88. I have been drinking that Aaron 88 the whole time we've been waiting on it. And now, I'll get probably, what did we agree, 1 bottle each of that, and that'll be it. And so we want something memorable, something that we ourselves will reach for. And so we do. We ask ourselves, that's a question Joshua asks in every one of our tastings, would you reach for this? And if we can answer that question honestly, we know if we've got a winner on our hands.
Very nice. Joshua, do you have anything to add to that about how you know when you found something special?
Yeah. Well, Jason really stole my answer, but I can think of a really good instance when he and I went off to the Westland Distillery, and we were about to pick 2 casks.
In Seattle. In Seattle, right?
Yeah. 1 cask was already selected. We were picking another cask, and we had a bunch of samples in front of us, and we were hemming and hawing, but we were both mindlessly going back to one particular cask sample, 437, if I remember the number correctly, and it was a peated, cask sample,
Right.
and saying, we don't know which one to go back to. And we just keep, we don't know which one to pick. We keep going back to the one.
Right.
And Jason said, I think we have our answer. We keep sipping this one. Why aren't we just going with this? And I said, you know what? You're 100% right. It's if you're mindlessly going back to it, that you're on an instinctual level. You're just like, give me that. And so that was a good example, I think, of a whiskey that spoke to us to say, yeah, pick me.
Nice. And they
What
use
number
local
did you
peat
think
up
the
there, right?
cask was? Oh, sorry.
473?
284.
No. The 284 was a different cask. That was our Oloroso. I'm talking about the peated Westland that's coming from a bourbon barrel. We're picking 2 new Westland casks.
Oh, you're talking about the one we haven't released yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a secret.
It's not.
Eric Leader, I see that Michael Nolan is muted. I don't think that we don't want Nolan muted on this.
God. He
Sorry,
knows,
I
he
did
knows
that
how
to
to unmute
myself.
himself.
I did
that
to
to
yourself.
myself. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, so but back to the whole issue of the cask. So then, when you're tasting something, I know that also. Am I correct that sometimes you decide that it needs to be aged in something else for a little while? You sometimes deal with the aging process too, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's nice to play around. There are other times, we had the example. I think it might be the 12-year-old Glenmurray that Paul showed us. We had the 12-year-old Glenmurray that was 6 years ex-bourbon and six years ex-Madeira, right?
Yeah.
Is that right, Joshua?
That's 100%.
And so we were first introduced to that cask when it was maybe 10 years old, 6 and 4, 6 and 2, 8 years old.
Yeah, it was 6 and 2. Yep.
6 and 2. And so that was a moment when we tasted something that we thought, okay, this is beginning to take shape, offered by the distillery, but let's check in on it again in another couple of years. Then we checked in on it in 6 and 4. Oh boy, it really made progress. And then we took a whiskey geek tour to Scotland. Nolan was part of it, Bino was part of it. And actually at the distillery, these guys tasted 3 different samples, one of which was the Madeira that we'd been watching that was now 6 and 6. And if memory serves, how did that one, did they pick that one or did they not pick that one?
That's right. They picked another one, but we bottled this one anyway.
Yeah.
All Single Cask Nation members failed us at that point.
Ouch. Showing us the Glenmurray 11 up in that corner. Oh, that's a low fill level on that one. Oh, Nolan showing us.
Oh, there we go. Another picture.
Oh, there's a nice background.
Nolan, what are you doing to us here? Oh, there we go. That
was it. Look at that.
No, that's good. So are there any distilleries that you want to get into, but you haven't been able to get any of their casks for your bottles? So who are they? Give us some names that you'd really like to bottle. Springbank. Everybody would like Springbank.
Yeah.
Lochside would be another one for me.
Which one? I didn't hear that.
Lochside Distillery. They're a demolished distillery.
Okay.
But yeah, I absolutely love their spirit. And they used to do something that few distilleries nowadays do. I think only Loch Lomond and Ben Nevis still do it. Because they produce both malt and grain, and actually used to do their own single blends.
Oh.
That were delicious.
Oh, wow. How about you, Jason? Who would you like to get into?
Yeah, for the longest time, my answer was Highland Park. And then even though we couldn't put Highland Park on the label, releasing the Stones of Stenness and having those online and in retail has been really, really rewarding. Ardbeg remains one that I would crawl over glass to get an Ardbeg. Naomi's timing is perfect on the background. Ardbeg, absolutely. I'm trying to think. This is always one of those ones when 2 hours from now I'll be like, oh, why didn't I say X?
And of course. Well, that's okay.
Are you guys going to look for another older Bowmore.
Older than 30.
Well, that same.
Oh, okay. Like 80s
well,
Bowmore.
same,
80s
Yeah.
Bowmore.
Oh yeah.
Keep our eyes open for sure, but we got a hell of a deal on that cask. You know, there were a few other 30-year-old Bowmores released around the same time, and ours was easily
the price.
Ours was easily 40% of the price of some of the other ones being released around the same time.
Wow, nice.
I was gonna say a third of the price.
Well, maybe a third. Oh yeah.
I mean, a third, 40%. That's pretty darn close. So Josh, we're gonna like what I'm tasting now. Also, a gift from Nolan. I'm now on to your wild turkey.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah, the wild turkey here.
Which one?
So this is
like
wild
that Nolan
turkey,
does
the
handouts.
9-year-old. Let's see. Yeah,
funky.
9-year-old wild turkey.
The funky.
Yeah.
Paul's got the Chicago Jubilee. I like that one.
Yeah.
Paul?
No, this
I
is
was
nice.
drinking that in an interview last week.
Very, very nice. So tell me a little bit about American whiskeys versus the Scotch whiskeys. You guys go all over the place, okay? And, you know, if you had your druthers, would you be spending your time in Kentucky and other parts of this country looking around at the small little distilleries out in the woods, or would you be over there on the island going through the peat bogs?
Clearly, I'm a man from overseas, and Scotch is what I cut my teeth on. Scotch is what fills my soul. I don't think there's a better spirits product in the world than Islay single malts, and so that would absolutely be my druthers day in and day out. However, since getting to know Joshua and spending time with Joshua is very good at exploring the spirits world writ large. And so I've had a blast learning from him, and in some cases learning with him about what the rest of the world has to offer. And for a man from overseas, Kentucky is part of the rest of the world.
Right.
And so getting down to wild turkey, spending time with Eddie Russell, spending time with Bruce Russell, seeing Jimmy Russell in passing, it's been fantastic, incredibly rewarding. But there was a day, and I've told this story on the podcast, but there was a day we were in the warehouse selecting casks with Eddie Russell, and he poured us a wild turkey straight from the cask, and I was nosing it, and it was rich, and it was complex, and it was layered. And then I tasted it, and everything that was on the nose continued to build across the palate. And then the finish was remarkable as well. And I said, Eddie, I really hope you take this in the way it's intended, which it's always going to be a dodgy compliment when you say that. I hope you'll take this in the spirits it's intended. I said, this is a Scotch-like bourbon, and I absolutely love it for that reason. And he kind of chuckled, and since then he's just referred to me as the Scotsman. That's often why we talk about being, Scotch drinkers, knowledgeable about Scotch, selecting bourbons for Scotch drinkers, rums for Scotch drinkers, mezcals for Scotch drinkers. We never want to pretend we're something that we're not. I'm not a rum expert at all. I'm not a mezcal expert. I'm thoroughly enjoying learning about the categories. But I do know when I taste something that's good, and I do know how to articulate that to somebody who's like the other things that I've liked or picked with Joshua.
Now, Joshua, as an American who is one of the keepers of the Quake, is your answer Kentucky or is your answer Islay?
Well, I stood up before to show you this.
Nice.
I am very much a Scotchophile, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love bourbon, right? And you can't see this side of my my room, but that's where all of my bourbon is.
Well, this wild turkey is amazing. This wild turkey is incredible. Love this stuff.
Right? And wild turkey makes absolutely fantastic juice that we love bottling. But, you know, and I've said this a few times, and I'm very serious about this, though. As much as I love bourbon, you know, I'm gonna drink scotch over that, and mezcal over that, and rum over that, and sherry over that, and rye over that, and then maybe bourbon. I think I've called bourbon my 7th favorite spirit. And it's not because I think it's bad. I think it's absolutely delicious. But I think about the things that I reach for, and the things that I reach for go in that order of scotch, mezcal, rum, sherry.
Right.
So. Yeah, we are Scotch whiskey people first and foremost. But Jay, I think you brought up a really good point. When we bottle a rum, when we bottle a mezcal, bottle a bourbon, we always have Scotch whiskey drinkers' palate in mind because we're looking for a certain level of complexity, which isn't always easy to find outside of Scotch whiskey.
So since you mentioned the word complexity, I want you to teach us something here. Americans like going for big flavors. You know, Americans like dark chocolates, really spicy peppers, things like that, smoky stuff. But several years ago, you guys got some popularity with your light whiskeys. Okay, so you need to talk a little bit about what light whiskey is in your mind. Because I've had some things that I would consider to be light whiskeys that have been delicious, like Glenturret. Okay,
Yeah.
Glenturret is just delicious. But can you educate us a little bit about light whiskey?
Yeah, so light whiskey was really a response. It was the bourbon industry's response to a switch in the American palate. Everybody was switching from Dad's bourbon to vodka and gin and cocktail drinks and cocaine. And right, I mean, it's the 80s. What else were they doing?
Hey, everybody needs a hobby.
Everybody needs a hobby. And so the bourbon industry was struggling. I mean, this is part of the reason why some of these old dusty bourbons are so incredibly good, because they were filling a lot of those bottles with older bourbon, and it was aged to perfection. That's why people go nuts over them, because no one was buying the bourbon, so you just let it age longer and you put them into a regular bourbon bottle. Anyway, that's an aside. The answer to clear spirits is, how do we make product to sell? If people are using vodka and gin to mix, what product can we make to mix to go into a cocktail? And so what Seagram's had developed, and then other distilleries sort of joined in, is they developed 2 different mash bills. One was the regular bourbon mash bill, and then another was a 99% corn, 1% malted barley mash bill.
Interesting.
And they would distill that spirit to over 80% alcohol.
Wow.
So when you're making bourbon, right, the highest you can distill it to is 80% alcohol coming off the still. Anything above that, and then you enter this world of light whiskey. And so they take that spirit, and then the other thing to really separate it from bourbon is to put it into, instead of new charred oak casks, into ex-bourbon casks, to used casks. And so you had a spirit that was not light in alcohol, but lighter in flavor. And that's simply because you distill it higher and you're getting lighter flavor coming out of it. You put it into a used cask and you're not getting the big oakiness coming through. And so then they would let that age to 2 or 3 years old, and you could mix some Seagram's with 7-Up and you'd have a 7 and 7, and that's Seagram's was just light whiskey, right? And it became a blending component for so many. But then that fell out of favor because actually it never really took, not like they thought it would. And that's when we found some older parcels of, 10, 12, 14, 25-year-old light whiskey, stuff that had been sitting around.
That old? So it was sitting around for that long?
Yeah.
Wow. Jason, what were you just showing us there?
Yeah, so this is a 1980s bottling of Crow. This is light whiskey. And you can see with the highball that the goal was to compete with vodka and gin. You wanted something that was just light, easy, drinkable. It's also 80 proof is in the bottom right corner. Don't know if you can see that. But yeah, so when we first pitched up to Jack Rose to talk about light whiskey with Bill Thomas, and this is actually what he gifted me. And so this was a gift from Bill Thomas as we talk, because obviously Bill Thomas knows everything about everything. And so that was the light whiskey. But the thing that I always say, and perhaps what Joshua was about to get to, is in the US, we talk about light whiskey and people say, light whiskey, I've never heard of this. And light sounds like L-I-T-E, sounds like light beer.
Yeah.
It sounds like a terrible product.
Yeah, Americans, that's not good for Americans.
Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound good at all.
Yeah, bad connotation.
But in Scotland, we've got a rich history of grain producers. Right. And what we've found in Scotland, and it has now been discovered around the rest of the world, the longer you let that Scottish grain whiskey sit in refill oak, the better it gets. It's got these wonderful, bright flavors. What Joshua and I set out to show with Scottish grain whiskey is it can also do well at younger ages. And so when we launched retail, we launched with a 10-year-old Girvan. Nobody really thought about putting out 10-year-old grain whiskey. Right. And so I always make the parallel between Scottish grain whiskey, which is well known and well respected, and American grain whiskey. So I try not to use the term light whiskey.
All right. So this is what I'm holding is your Inchmore 20.
Nice. I don't know if you remember, but the last Jubilee in Chicago,
they're light whiskey, right?
Was a light whiskey, a 25-year-old produced at the old Seagram's plant.
Yeah.
And I mean, that literally just takes me right back to the 80s. Just a phenomenal whiskey.
Oh,
yeah, there you go, Nolan.
Cheers, Michael.
That is so good.
Very, very good. So before I open, I've got a bunch of other questions that I can ask here, but I'd like to open it up to other people. But before I do that, I just want to show you the next one I'm drinking, which is Bowmore. Okay, this is your Bowmore.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So Gil, tell us, what do you get off of that?
I get smoke.
Really?
I get smoke. I get vanilla. I'm getting some grass. I'm getting some grassiness.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
A little bit of like cocoa nibs.
Ooh.
Yeah. No, this is.
Do you get any lavender?
You get that?
Now I do. On the taste, I do. Yeah. I was thinking more like heather. A little bit like heather, maybe. That's nice. That's delicious. So tell me about this. This 30-year-old Bowmore. Is this the one you were talking about before, Joshua?
Yeah. I don't know if I was talking about it. I think Michael brought it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's always
so
bringing it up.
there's some rich history to Bowmore. You can really track who was the distillery manager from decade to decade and from spirit style to spirit style. Between 1982 and 1989, Bowmore went through a really interesting period. Now, you can imagine the early to mid-'80s is when distilleries around Scotland were either shutting down or being demolished because no one was drinking whiskey anymore, right? This is the same time frame when bourbon was dying and light whiskey was, coming out, right? So there are parallels between the two sides of the pond. So a lot of distilleries are shutting down. Bowmore was not one of them, because Bowmore at the time was a sweetheart to blenders. People used Bowmore for a lot of different blends, and a lot of distilleries that were supplying two blends had shut down. And so Bowmore was taxed a bit more. When I say taxed, I mean, they had more work than they expected.
Okay.
And the rumor is, because of this, they were running their stills really fast, really hot, really hard. And because of this change in production style from 1982 to 1989, you get this floral lavender note coming through. that sometimes can come as soapy, sometimes can through almost smelling and tasting like lipstick, and it is belovedly called FWP Beaumont, and FWP stands for French Whore's Perfume. so
Beautiful.
this was maybe 12, 15 years ago, and somewhere on some online whiskey forum, someone was talking about 80s Beaumont, and some guy from, let's just say, Holland says, "Oh, I wouldn't drink that. It's like French Whore's perfume." And then the response was, "And why do you know what French Whores smell
Right,
like?"
exactly.
And I don't think he ever responded, but that comment was left out there, and so now everybody calls it FWP.
That's beautiful. On that note, actually, I don't want to be selfish here. I've got about 10 other questions.
Can I ask 2 questions?
Well, actually, what I was going to do is I was going to turn it over to you to ask 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll open it up to the public.
You were talking about wild turkey for quite a while, and you just released a Dickel. Is there other wild turkeys or other bourbons you're going to be releasing in the next 9 months?
Well, you
hard
called
to put a
it
date on
Dickel. We didn't call it Dickel.
Well, I know you didn't call it, but there's 2 choices.
Well, we've already announced the Whistle Pig project, and so we're the first independent bottler that Whistle Pig have ever worked with, and so that's been a fun back and forth. And
when can we expect that?
Hopefully by the end of June, beginning of July.
I'd call it the beginning of July. It's being bottled June 17th, and it's, so long as everything goes to plan and the truck doesn't take forever to get to the warehouse. One time we lost a truck for about 5 weeks.
Oh,
I was going to say sometime in August.
Yeah. Or? we hope the beginning of July, but it could be December 2023. We'll see.
Got it. So, Michael, any other questions before we open it up to the public?
Yeah, and then recently you've mentioned you've got a lot in the pipeline that's kind of parked in Scotland for various reasons. Can you share some of your future releases, even though Chicago still hasn't got your last release?
These are so funny. These are the exact same questions he texts me and I refuse to answer.
I know.
He now got me in a public forum.
I've got you. On the public forum, I'm going to ask.
Well, I can answer part of this for you. The second part is Chicago has gotten the latest Single Cask Nation release. You can find it at Warehouse Liquors now. And what?
I called them on Saturday, so they didn't have it. So
they should have it now. And Binny's was just made aware that the product is there ready for pickup for distribution in whatever stores they're going to put their allocations in.
Yeah,
Very nice.
They said they were ordering it this weekend. So
well, and yeah, you know we've got an Imperial coming. Yeah, you know the next. That Beaumont that you shared with Gil was the first part of the Woodcut series, and the Imperial 30-year-old will be the second part. And again, the price on that Imperial is silly for what it is. It's expensive, don't get me wrong, but for what it is, it's a good price on that as well.
Well, as we open it up to questions, I'm pouring myself now your Ardmore 8.
Oh, that's what I had next to me, Gil.
God, great minds, Jason. Great, Joshua. Great minds, Joshua. All right, Eric Leader, do me a favor. Take it away. Moderate questions. Open it up. If you have any questions yourself, go for it.
Sure. I know Michael Bloom had already asked me, actually, where'd it go? What, besides obviously your own, what whiskey podcasts are you guys listening to?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a question.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you.
I'm about to be
100% honest. I don't listen to any whiskey podcasts. I listen to comedy podcasts. I listen to news podcasts. I'm in whiskey every day. I love recording with Joshua now at least once a week. That's all to the fore. I don't listen to any.
Right. Joshua?
pretty much the same. Occasionally, I'll listen to Whiskey Cast because I do like the news that Mark reports. But for the most part, I'm listening to comedy podcasts, punk rock, and political podcasts. Pretty boring.
Yeah, let's stay out of politics. We don't need politics. All right. Next question.
Anybody? Either raise your hand virtually through the participant or raise your hand. Joel? Right. Oh.
Who?
This is amazing. Really enjoy this, and I'm calling from or coming in from Hamilton, Ontario. So, as you know, in Ontario, it's the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. So maybe it's the largest, just because of the thing in who knows the world. But of course, they've got the monopoly. So I guess there's no chance that an independent folks like you would ever be able to go and distribute through them. Is that right?
You might be surprised, Joel.
Ooh.
Joshua?
So we've been distributed in Alberta, but our importer there has sort of switched gears, and we're in the midst of looking for a new importer there. And there's actually a shop in Edmonton who can ship across province lines too. We're about to get distribution in Quebec, and assuming those are successful and we get those locked down, Ontario is the next one. It's just a matter of, like, your markets are very confusing to us.
Right. Well, to us too.
Well, Canadians don't understand Americans, so.
Well, or whatever. And but thank you. That's great. And if you let us know, and I mean, I guess there's a Simcha Wines, which is a distributor of wine, obviously independent of the LCBO, and so so that's a Jewish liquor a Jewish wine distributor in Toronto. I've got no connection with him, so I'm just saying, but just for that. Okay, and then just one other thing. So for the Islay, so Bruichladdich, we actually 15, 16 years ago, when I guess they were struggling, some buddies and brothers-in-law, we actually bought a cask. So so it's coming up around 16 years, and I don't know, but I don't really know much about the distillery. Is there anything you can say, any inside stuff on that? And are we going to be disappointed or not? Or?
No, you're definitely not going to be disappointed. It's whenever we lead tours, Bruichladdich and Springbank always resonate with people. I would also add in Kilholman and Arran, but Bruichladdich are fantastic. So a wonderful chap, Duncan. Duncan, last name escapes me because I'm getting old now. Duncan McGilvery. Duncan was a tremendous chap and had spent his entire adulthood behind the scenes at Bruichladdich. And if you wandered around, it's a motley crew. There's Raymond in the middle. As you wandered around Bruichladdich with Duncan, he would tell you things like, "Oh, I repaired the belt on that in 1974, and I was born in 74," and so it's always resonated. You can also say things like, do you see the spirits tanker that we use? Because they would move from where they distilled, they would collect the spirit and then drive it up the hill, and where they casked it was up the hill. A lot of Scottish distilleries are built in reverse, so gravity always helps you. Bruichladdich being Bruichladdich, there's Duncan right there. It looks like I'm going to fight the photographer. I was very, very happy in that picture.
You look a little pissed off there.
I'm not sure what's happening there.
Truth be told, he did punch me after that picture was taken. So.
And Duncan is still there, or they've sold out now, or
no? And so Duncan unfortunately just died.
Oh,
He just passed away
in the last couple of months.
Sad. Yeah.
Tremendous human being. And so given that they're in the reverse of gravity, they had to fill a tanker and then drive it up the hill to the filling station. And he would always say, "Oh, I got that tanker from an old milk company for 2 casks of whiskey." And he was always making deals that are very Isla specific deals. But he was Isla born and raised. And I think if you could see a person that really personified the distillery, it was Duncan and Brookladdy. And so it's a special place, a special distillery, and still has special people running it. You won't be disappointed.
That's great. And I just want to close just with one thing. So people ask about the glasses that you drink your scotch in, and do you have any advice or preferences or things with that?
Well, here's the Whiskey Jubilee glass.
Yeah. Limited edition.
These are Highland Park glasses, right?
No,
nope. It's called Spade Ram.
Spade Ram.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're by a company called Urban Bar. You can get where was your name here? So Joel, you can get glasses called Glencairns,
Yes.
Glencearn.
Yeah, Martin Duffy spoke with us a few weeks ago.
Oh,
And along with Martin also threw you guys under the bus saying they use those cheap glasses at the Jubilee.
So here's what I don't like about Glencairns. So I like the fact that I can hold this like this. I can palm this if I want. If it's slightly cold, I can warm my liquid in it. With a Glencairn, you have that stubby little dick coming between you. Oh, foot. Yeah, not a dick, a foot. Coming between you and your glass. And that it gets in the way. Like, it's got the right shape to it, obviously, because this is the same shape. But I don't like having something keep me from my whiskey. So
got it. Josh,
so that's what
anything to
Glencairn
add?
does wrong.
the only thing that I would add is if you don't have a whiskey glass like this or a Glencairn in your house, but you want to get a similar effect, go for a small white wine glass, something that doesn't bulb out too much and kind of tapers at the end, and that'll get you close. Yeah, kind of close to what Jason has in his right hand there.
Yeah.
But yeah, white wine glass. I use those on occasion when I'm in a jam.
Very nice.
Rocks glasses are the worst. You just don't want to go with a rocks glass if you're looking to
because you lose all the
flavor.
nose. You lose all the aromas. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Next question.
Evan. Oh, wait, hold on.
Evan.
Unmuted. Hello. Sorry, technology. So, you guys do a great job of putting together this Jubilee. What do you look for in a distillery to make it part of the Whiskey Jubilee? Talk a little bit about what makes whiskey kosher or not kosher.
I didn't
catch all of that.
Okay, I think that what Evan said, Evan, we couldn't hear you that well. It sounded like you were asking. It sounded like what you were asking was how they go about selecting who's going to be participating in Whiskey Jubilee.
Yes.
Are you looking for a particular flavor, particular type of whiskey, or particular culture?
And talk a little bit about kosher whiskey. What makes whiskey kosher? What would make whiskey unkosher?
So for the festival part of it, and Jason, I'm sorry to step on your toes here, but I think I might have an answer here. From the festival aspect of it, in a way, the way we offered tables made it a bit self-selecting, because we would never offer more than 2, maybe 3 tables to exhibitors. And so when you're a company like Diageo who would like to take up, 7, 8 tables, that kind of blocks them out. Though they have been, just pouring sort of the classic malts. But our stipulation, the other sort of self-selecting aspect of it is, if you wanted to join the Jubilee, if you wanted to participate and be an exhibitor there, then you have to have someone that is distillery direct or someone that can talk at length about the products. We had a very strict no models policy that unfortunately some people did, crossed that policy, and we had to have words with them. But yeah, that kind of culls the list down a bit, and that way we're getting in some of the smaller brands, the independent bottlers, the craft distillers, the people who are really there to share, because that's their life. So
it's a higher level discussion then, then people who know what they're doing, we can go up and say, tell me about this, and you're getting an actual answer as opposed to a canned response.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I won't mention any names here, but the worst experience that we had, it was in Seattle, and I remember seeing this woman walk in. She was very, very pretty girl wearing far too few clothes for our event. And so I asked, can I help you out with anything? And she said, yeah, I want to know where this whiskey is. And she thought that I maybe delivered the whiskey. I said, no, I'm the showrunner. What whiskey you're talking about? And she tried to pronounce it and she couldn't. And I said, okay, so it's obvious you're not brand direct.
Right.
So I had to have a serious talk with that brand. That ended up being our last event in Seattle, having nothing to do with that woman, but just because we mothballed the Jubilee.
Got it.
Other
questions?
Anybody who had a table knew from us that the goal was to communicate with the attendee, and we always spoke in glowing praise of our attendees so that exhibitors would know exactly what they were walking in on, and that really helped them mostly, as Joshua alludes to send the right people for the job. But no matter how many times you told LVMH that they were screwing up, they never got it through there.
So actually, since you're mentioning Jubilee, I do have a question for you. Is Jubilee owned by Jewish Whiskey Company or by Single Cask Nation or by Impex? What are the relationships here?
Yeah. So
Impex. Yeah. Do you want to answer this, Jason?
Yeah.
I can fight over it.
Let me put the framework, and then you can lead off with the Impex thing. So when Josh and I started the company, Jewish Whiskey Company, LLC. Jewish Whiskey Company owned Single Cask Nation, Whiskey Geek Tours, Whiskey Jubilee. Now, Jewish Whiskey Company is doing business as J&J Spirits, which is now also a global entity for us. Mm-hmm. But we've kind of tried to give Single Cask Nation its own floor so that brand can stand on its own 2 feet. The Whiskey Geek Tours, the Whiskey Jubilee being mothballed, will still exist under the
and
Jewish
that's also
Whiskey
your
Company,
podcast, One Nation Under Whiskey. That's also owned by J&J.
Correct. And so One Nation Under Whiskey is actually the tagline of Single Cask Nation. Single Cask Nation, One Nation Under Whiskey. Then we pulled that little tag so that we could use it for the podcast.
Speaking of the podcast, do you guys think you're going to get back to Chicago sometime? I mean, I know everything is up in the air because of COVID, but do you plan on eventually coming back to Chicago doing a live broadcast?
100%. 100%. Absolutely. I mean,
last time you were here, it disappeared again. Last time you were here, you were fortunate enough.
You there?
I think he froze.
We seem to have lost. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I have, my office is like 50 feet from the Wi-Fi, but it seems to disappear on me every once in a while. I think it's my computer more than the Wi-Fi, but
not the operator.
Here in Chicago, you broadcast live, and it was a great event, a lot of fun.
Yep.
I think we'd look forward to doing it again, or having you here, hosting you again.
Yeah.
I would love to be back. Love to.
So actually, Ford Ray is asking a good question here.
That sounds like Ford.
Yeah, well, here we go. He's a local Chicago guy. So Can you expound on the newer strategy of going after larger casks due to the quick sellouts of your online exclusives? Are there any additional ways you guys are trying to get more bottles into Nations members' hands? And I've got to tell you, I love this question because the number of times that I've tried to go online to buy your stuff, And I swear to God, either I'm talking to a client and I forget to do it, or something's going on, or I show up at like 12:07 and the fucker's already sold out. So, talk to us about this, because it's tough to get your stuff.
Okay, let me talk to this a little bit. I enjoy talking to this. So when Josh and I started the company, we obviously were building a membership. And so we knew to search out smaller casks, which would be somewhere in that bourbon barrel kind of size. After a couple of years, we're building membership, people were buying the bottles, we expanded into hoggies. And we actually did an Aaron in an Oloroso hoggy. However, we knew anytime we bought a barrel or a cask that we were investing in 6 months, 9 months, a year, sometimes longer than that. So we knew we had to be patient as the orders came in and the bottles went out the door. It's really only been, oh, what's that? I can't see it. Oh, the English Whiskey Company. Yeah, right. So that's a great example from Bloom. English Whiskey Company was a spectacular whiskey that sat on the shelf, and people would order it, take a chance on it. They would get it, they would taste it, they would order. And you might not be able to imagine this type of world, Gil, but they would receive it, they would taste it, they would enjoy it, they would pour it for friends, they would buy more, and they would ship to them. And we had somebody the other day mention, oh, is this also going to be the end of year sales? And it's like, yeah, it's all gone. It's all different. And so now Josh and I are in the very fortunate position of just simply looking for butts for the first time. And so we've made it clear to the membership that we're not going to compromise quality for quantity. That makes zero sense to us. But we've never been in the privileged position of looking for larger casks. And as we know, there are tons of fantastic butts out there. It sounds rude when you say it like that, but right, there's lots of opportunities to bottle exceptional whiskey. It's what?
It's more complimentary than rude. Really nice butts.
Well, we like big butts, and we do not lie.
Right. And so that's one aspect. So now we're looking at butts for the very first time. There's also a little thing we've been playing around with the company, which is we've done 2 double cask nation releases. So obviously we're single cask nation. We like to play around. We like to have fun. So we've done double cask nation. And we did a Craigellachie for that. That was 2 octaves, which were already tiny. But we brought them together, and that gave us 140 bottles for release, which did sell out quite nicely. And then we did our Glenfarclas. And I'll tell you this with the Glenfarclas.
I tried to get that one. I had 2 computers going.
Right.
And I still didn't get it.
This is how quickly, there we go, Ford Ray is a good lad. This is how quickly the nation blew up. Is from when we first started discussing double cask nation Glenfarclas release with George Grant at the distillery, we had said to him, okay, we'll bring these 2 hoggies together. They would give us somewhere around 600 bottles. Can we bring them in 2 stages? Can we bring in the first 300? We'll take 6 months to sell them. At the end of that 6 months, we'll bring in the second half of the double cask. And from the moment we released it, we contacted George and said, please put the second half on a boat right now. We need it ASAP. And so as soon as that second half sold out, we entered into conversations with George about a second double cask nation Glenfarclas, which Joshua and I selected, good grief, 2018? 2019?
No.
I don't even know where we are now.
I pre-selected that in August of 2017, brought you back the samples, and then we decided upon it in September of 2017. And then do the math from there.
No. The one where you and I pitched up the distillery and selected 2. We went through the warehouse and selected.
Second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2018.
You and I walked the warehouse in 2018.
You see, okay, so this is all fine and good. You see, this is all fine and good, but I have to admit that it's difficult sometimes, and it's very challenging because, for those of us who aren't necessarily able to get it online like that, I like to go into the binnies and whatever they have there, as I try to pick it up. But we do miss out on some really good stuff. So I guess to a certain extent, it's bad. Like Whiskey Jubilee, you leave them wanting for more.
Well, it's interesting because. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but this is why our retail range is so important and why we pay so much attention to it. Is there's simply no way that we could please all of the members that we have. And when I say members, I mean those that purchase whiskeys we bottle for our online of our. We have 8,000 single cask nation members that
there's no way. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you just can't do it.
Bottles. Even if we did a double cask nation, then maybe they're looking at 400 bottles. Like, there really is no way to satisfy everybody, but we are looking at bigger casks. We are looking at creating some batches of product, looking at, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but creating a whole new line of products that are consistently available, that are going to be incredibly delicious, but more readily available. But it's really our retail line that I hope will sort of help heal the wounds to those who have missed out on online bottlings, because we're putting our heart and soul into both our retail and our online bottlings equally.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So we've been on for an hour now. Okay, been on for an hour. And out of respect for your time, what I'd like to do now is just open up for one more question. Eric, are there any other questions out there that you see anybody raising his hand?
Yeah, there's Paul.
Okay, Paul, if you can ask the last question, please, and then I'll sum it up for us.
Well, wow, the pressure's on me now, huh?
Nice beard, Paul.
All right, well, so in all fairness, most of my questions have been answered throughout the night proactively. But I guess kind of on your last point, and I think you basically said it there, I was at first going to ask about, hey, any more double cask nation? And then I was going to joke, well, if that's an issue, how about triple cask nation? You heard it first here, right? But I guess that's kind of what you're implying in your last statement in many ways. Maybe not even 3 casks, but perhaps getting into, some kind of blending of sorts, etc.
Yeah, well, we've done the small batch nation, and so you'll see more of single cask nation, more of double cask nation, and a little bit of small batch nation.
Okay, all right. So
I did have somebody suggest that if we went with some new make spirit or some clear mezcal, to go with nil cask nation.
Americans wouldn't understand that.
No.
Americans have no, don't even start. Americans don't understand lots of things. So
or drive them crazy and go aught cask nation.
Aught. Yeah, that would just mess them up. So I'd like everybody to refill their glasses. I am refilling with your poppy nonsense. Your pappy nonsense.
Oh,
okay.
Nice.
Okay. And again, a gift from Michael Nolan. And Eric Leader, if you can do me a favor and unmute everybody.
Okay.
Okay. Raise a glass and say thank you to Joshua and Jason, and cheers.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
Joshua,
Cheers.
Jason, and cheers.
Thank you.
Lunch and
Thank you so much for having us.
Lunch and
thank you very much.
Hey, the one thing I wish you guys talked about, and I wish you talked to people about, is Whiskey Geek Tours. Because I think a lot of people here would be interested.
Take a few minutes if you have it. Tell us.
Can I go?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want.
I was not allowed to unmute myself.
Me or Joshua? Do we fight over this one?
No, you go. You go.
Yeah. So Whiskey Geek Tours, the reason we don't talk about it a lot or advertise it a lot is because we like to be able to just take ourselves off to the Bruichladdich Pier by ourselves.
Boonahaven.
Michael, where's the next picture where I'm grabbing his butt? Do you have that one?
I did not put that up. I thought about it. I said, I better not put that up.
You should have put that up, man. That's,
But
yeah,
look at the
Jim
people you get to meet.
yeah, look at that. Jam, Bino, Graham. Yeah, Ben, Lynn.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, so the thing for us is we like the Whiskey Geek tours to be about 8 people because we want everything you've just seen in these photographs, we want it to be an intimate experience. Just like the Jubilee, we want those on a Whiskey Geek tour to be able to sit down and ask questions of those who operate distilleries, run tours of distilleries, run VIP tours of distilleries. Look at this. This, I have to tell you a very quick story because it's fantastic. The dude in the front left was not a part of the Whiskey Geek tour. And we were all the Whiskey Geek tour, and this dude joined us. And we thought, oh, I cannot believe it. It's a Whiskey Geek tour. It's just meant to be us. Why has this happened? And so he sat with us during this tasting, and he was fine. He was reasonably quiet, and we had all of our usual nonsense. And then at the end of it, he said, you know, you've all been so nice to me. Would you mind if I shared a dram with you all? And we said, yeah, go on. And he went down into his backpack and he pulled out a canister of Glenfiddich 12-year-old. And we all just like, you could see our shoulders droop like, oh, we, sir, are Whiskey Geeks and we, sir, are on a Whiskey Geek tour. And he popped it open and he pulled out a 21-year-old Lagavulin from 2007. Which is my favorite whiskey of all time, and I think Joshua's favorite whiskey of all time. And he said, I keep it in the Glenfiddich 12-year-old canister so nobody steals it. and he said, but this is a very special bottle to me, and you've all been so special, I'd like to share it. And he opened it and popped the cork, and we all filled our glasses. He passed the bottle round the table.
That's the bottle at on the table.
There you go, exactly, right?
Wow.
And we all passed it around. We did a respectful pour. We even told Bino, respectful pour, and he did, bless him. He's a good lad. And so we came around, and then we toasted him, and he toasted us. And that's exactly what we're looking for on Whiskey Geek tours. Just things you'd never even imagine could happen to you, happen to you when you're in a small group of fellow whiskey lovers. So Josh had one scheduled for June, I had one scheduled for September. We've lost them both because of COVID, and so we'll go into next year. But it's normally just groups coming to us and saying, hey, there's half a dozen of us. We'd like to go to Scotland. Can you take us around? And so we talk about what they'd like to do, where they'd like to go, and we just have a blast and we line up very special experiences, and we drink from casks as much as we possibly can.
You know, you just said something that I think is the wonderful way to sum this up. You said a small group of people who like their whiskey, you know, being respectful to one another, just enjoying the time, enjoying the drams. So again, everybody, thank you very much. L'chaim, cheers. Until we can all do this in person, hopefully sometime soon. L'chaim, everybody.
Again for having us.
Thank you.
Thank your families. Thank your families for sharing you with us, Joshua and Jason. And now that they're not used to you having to work in the evenings.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Love seeing you.
Cheers.